These 5 cards need a buff right now. Find out all about them in today's video. Hey guys, it's Hunter right here, and as the month begins to wrap up, the October balance changes come closer and closer. Of course, most of us can agree that this meta has been much more balanced than before, with a wide variety of decks being used in all sorts of archetypes. But of course, nothing is perfect, so today I'll be giving my top 5 cards that I would buff for the next set of balance changes. These cards have been really just underpowered in the current meta, and I believe a buff could serve really well. Now of course, the CR dev team already has their balance changes locked in according to this tweet by the Rumham, so I'm really interested to see how many of these suggestions that I got right. So without further ado, let's get right into the list. Number 1. Goblin Giant. The release of this card was once again underwhelming. However, I quite like the concept of this card. This troop introduced the concept of kind of invincible troops in the form of spear goblins that would basically do infinite amounts of damage given the Goblin Giant was still alive. Now my biggest recommendation for this card would probably be a tiny buff in damage, as well as changing its movement speed to slow. Now I also have several other ideas on how I would balance this card, so to find out more about that, be sure to check out my video on how I would change the Goblin Giant. Link will be in the description. Number 2. Inferno Tower. This was a buff that was highly requested by the pro players in the community, and I completely agree. At the moment, in almost every scenario, Inferno Dragon is the better choice, and Inferno Tower just isn't getting much love. As this tweet says, an Inferno Tower buff would in turn see an uptick in control and siege decks, both of which are much needed and somewhat counter bait. Furthermore, bait doesn't solely rely on Inferno, and I doubt this buff would make bait OP. Hopefully that's enough to convince you that the Inferno Tower does need a buff. I honestly do think that with all the beatdown running everywhere in this meta, Inferno Tower could really serve a tiny buff just to make it a slightly better alternative to other tank destroyers. Number 3. X-Bow. X-Bow is one of the few underrepresented archetypes in the current meta. With beatdown and control being just so popular, siege is so hard to play, with hard counters just left and right. Now the trouble is, how could you buff the X-Bow without just it being OP and annoying? I think probably the biggest buff that could happen is to decrease the load time from 3.5 to 3 seconds. Again, keep in mind that beatdown is really popular, and if you manage to manufacture a big enough elixir advantage defending with an X-Bow deck, your opponent will have less time to be able to react and distract your X-Bow. This change would make X-Bow slightly better against beatdown and might just provide the much needed boost for this archetype. Number 4. Skeleton Army. This card is one that is seen in the lower arenas and just really never seen again. With Zap and Log running almost every single deck in the game, Skeleton Army just gets destroyed, while the Goblin Gang provides much more bang for your buck. Here's an interesting buff I found on Twitter that I completely agree with. Happy here says, and for Skeleton Army, I don't know how you can buff it since HP and damage can't change. Maybe make it a 2 elixir card and reduce the number of skeletons, because Zap and Log are 2 elixir. Wow, this honestly sounds like a great idea. Skarmy would now be an even trade with all these small spells, and would give it a bit of an edge over a more expensive Goblin Gang. Number 5. Barbarian Barrel. Oh man, this card just never seems to be good. Despite repeated buffs over and over, nobody just seems to want to use this card. Now I can think of 2 changes that would actually make this card better. The first is to increase its range. The tiny range is just kind of pathetic. I mean, come on, sure, I don't care that much about the knockback, but at least make the card actually hit stuff. Log is just clearly the better alternative at the moment. No reason to run Barbarian Barrel over it. The second change that I would make to the card, much less popular, would be to change the Barbarian in the barrel to an Elite Barbarian and set the elixir cost back to 3. Change nothing else. Think about that. You all probably hate this change at the moment, but I'm sure even if they implemented this change, you'd all sleep on the Barbarian Barrel. Also, the dev team is working on an Elite Barbarian rework in the future, so that in combination with this change could see some very interesting results. So there we go, my top 5 cards that I would buff in the next set of balance changes in October. Do you guys agree with these changes? What other cards would you buff or nerf? Be sure to let me know in the comments section below. But unfortunately, guys, that is all I've got time for in today's video. If you enjoyed, please leave a like down below as well as a subscription to my channel. And as always, this is Legend of Ray, and I'm signing off. See you guys next time.